Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. A few years ago, I decided to clean out my garage. It was packed with old furniture, boxes of books, clothes I didn't wear, and tools I hadn't touched in years. I figured a yard sale would help clear the space and maybe bring in a little cash. By mid-morning on Sunday, my driveway was lined with tables, everything laid out in the sun. People from the neighborhood stopped by, asking prices, making small talk, haggling, and walking off with random things. As the day went on, more people showed up. Foot traffic picked up fast. Around late morning, I noticed a man standing by a table with tools. He was holding a wrench, then a hammer, turning them over slowly in his hands. He wore a faded gray shirt, jeans, and a Dodgers cap. Nothing strange at first glance, but something about the way his eyes kept scanning the area made me uneasy. Assuming he was looking for the person in charge, I walked over. He asked if I had more tools. His voice was flat, almost rehearsed. I pointed to a box further back and he nodded, moving over to it. The sale started to slow down around noon. Most people had come and gone. I was tired and ready to wrap things up. That's when I noticed the same man again. He was still there. He hadn't bought anything, hadn't left, just kept circling the tables. But now he wasn't looking at the items. He was looking at me. I pretended not to notice. I told everyone I was closing up. A few people made last-minute purchases. I kept glancing at the man, trying to stay calm. When the driveway finally emptied out, except for him, I began packing. I told him the sale was over and that I needed to put everything away. He didn't leave. He stood there, hands in his pockets, just watching me. I tried to brush it off, telling myself he was harmless, just odd. But every time I turned my back, he seemed closer. When I looked again, he was standing in the middle of the driveway. He said something about the tools again, but it didn't sound like a question. I told him they weren't for sale anymore and that I was done for the day. He nodded but didn't walk away. Instead, he reached down and picked up the hammer again, running his fingers along the handle. My chest tightened. I told him to leave. To put the hammer down. But he didn't move. He just stared at me. I don't know what made him snap. Maybe he had planned this from the start. 1 second he was still, and the next he was charging toward me. I stumbled backward, almost tripping over the edge of the driveway. He raised the hammer. I turned and ran. I made it to the garage, but he grabbed my arm, fingers locking around it hard. I twisted away and fell. I landed near one of the boxes and reached out, grabbing the first thing I could find. My hand closed around a wrench. I swung it. The metal hit him hard. He staggered back, clutching his shoulder. His face twisted with pain and rage, and I didn't wait to see what he'd do next. I got up and ran, bolting through the side door into the house. I slammed it shut, locked it, and leaned against it, heart pounding. For a moment, there was silence. Then I heard gravel crunching. Fading footsteps. I peeked through the blinds. He was gone. The driveway was empty. My table still scattered with the leftovers. I called the police. My hands were shaking as I explained everything. They arrived quickly. I showed them the hammer he dropped and the wrench I had used. They took notes, asked questions, but they never found him. Days passed. Then weeks. I kept expecting him to return. Every time a car pulled into the driveway, I froze. Every knock made my stomach twist. I stopped holding yard sales. I stopped opening the garage. I started watching people more closely. I couldn't stop replaying the way he looked at me. The way he gripped that hammer. The police told me to stay alert. To report anything strange. But there was nothing. Just an empty driveway. A memory. A shadow. I never touched the leftover stuff again. It sat there, collecting dust. And at night, sometimes I dream about him. Standing at the edge of the driveway. Hands in his pockets. Eyes fixed on me. And I wake up, heart racing, drenched in sweat. What was supposed to be a simple yard sale turned into something I can't forget. It left no bruise, no scar you can see, but it changed everything. I don't know where he is now. I don't know if he'll come back. All I know is that I've never felt safe in my own home again. It was just a regular Saturday morning, the kind where I had errands to run and a list of things to get done. But a handwritten yard sale sign on the corner caught my eye. Without thinking, I turned down the side street and pulled over. The sale was set up in the yard of an older house, nothing fancy, just tables full of random old stuff. Toward the back of one table, half hidden on the ground, was a dusty cardboard box. It was closed with brittle tape and the edges were torn. Something about it seemed different, so I knelt down and picked it up. It felt solid, not too heavy, but definitely full of something. I asked the man running the sale what was inside. He looked around my age, maybe a little older, and said it was just some junk he found in the attic. Told me I could look through it if I wanted. I peeled the tape back and lifted the lid. Inside was a strange collection of items. A couple of old hairbands, 2 rusted keys, a small brush, and some faded jewelry. But what really caught my attention were the newspaper clippings. They were all yellowed with age, folded and worn. I picked one up. The headline said, "Missing woman found dead." The article didn't name her. She was listed as a Jane Doe. I felt a shiver crawl up my arms as I read more. There were several clippings, all focused on the same story. A young brunette woman, last seen in the early 90s, her body discovered weeks later in a wooded area outside town. No ID. No leads. Her murder unsolved. I kept digging. There were black and white photographs tucked between the papers. Grainy images of a woman who matched the Jane Doe description. One showed her sitting alone at a bus stop. Another had her walking through a store parking lot. They weren't just newspaper photos. They looked personal, like someone had followed her. Watched her. Maybe even stalked her. I looked up at the seller. He stood there with his arms crossed, not making eye contact, like he just wanted the whole thing to be over with. I asked if he knew who the woman was. He said no, claimed he never even looked inside the box before today. But something about him felt off. How do you have a box like that and never once get curious enough to check it out? I didn't push him. Instead, I looked through the clippings again and found a name mentioned. A boyfriend. Apparently he was the last person seen with the woman. A local guy. But after she vanished, he did too. No trace. No photo. Just a name. It was impossible to tell if the seller knew more than he said. Maybe he really just found the box. Or maybe he was tied to the case in some deeper way. I didn't know. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. I offered a few dollars for the box. He took the money without saying much, and I left. When I got home, I laid everything out on the kitchen table. The brush. The jewelry. The photos. The articles. I tried to make sense of it all, like putting together a puzzle with half the pieces missing. It was unsettling. Every new piece of information just made things murkier. Later that afternoon, my husband came home. I showed him the box. At first he thought I was being dramatic. But once he read the clippings and saw the photos, his whole attitude changed. He pointed out that whoever had those photos must have known the woman's identity. If they knew her, why didn't they ever come forward? He tried to convince me it could be nothing. That maybe someone just threw random stuff into a box without thinking. But that didn't sit right with me. The items were too specific, too personal. It felt deliberate. Like someone had held on to them on purpose. Like someone had been proud of them. He didn't say when his mind changed, but I could tell. When I reached toward the box again, he pulled my hand back and said not to touch anything else. That's when I knew he believed it too. That it wasn't just some spooky coincidence. That we might be handling evidence. The next morning we called the police. They came and took the box, along with everything in it. One of the officers told me it would be logged as part of the Jane Doe case. He said they planned to follow up with the man who sold it to me. Later, I called to check on what happened. The detective told me that while the box didn't solve the case outright, it was still a major lead in an investigation that had gone cold decades ago. I didn't crack the case. I didn't even really get answers. But at least I did something. Maybe whoever that woman was, someone would finally remember her for more than just a headline. One summer morning, I walked down the street to check out a yard sale. I've always liked those kinds of things, never knowing what hidden gems you might find. When I got there, a decent-sized crowd was already browsing through the tables. I spotted this old lawn chair that looked exactly like one my grandma used to own. That familiar design pulled me in, so I went over to check it out. While I was inspecting the chair, I started hearing raised voices nearby. A woman was standing at a table filled with dishes and old kitchen tools, arguing with an older man. Neither of them owned the yard sale. They were just there like the rest of us, hoping for a good deal. From what I could tell, the argument was about a box of fine china plates. The woman seemed interested in them, and so did the man. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal. Yard sales can get heated. People take things personally, especially when it comes to price or value. But this wasn't about that. This was two people wanting the same item and neither willing to back down. The lady was the first to really raise her voice. The man responded, and soon they were both shouting, trying to talk over one another. I kept looking at the chair, but my ears were on them. Then it escalated fast. The woman suddenly lifted one of the plates high above her head. I thought she might throw it, like she'd rather break it than let him have it. But before she could do anything, the man lunged at her. He grabbed the plate, and they started tugging back and forth. She had one hand on the plate and one on her purse. He used both hands and twisted his body as he yanked it free. The plate came loose. He lost his balance. He fell backward hard. There was a sharp crash, and the sound made my stomach drop. A few people gasped. The woman froze. For a second, nobody moved. Then someone screamed. The man wasn't getting up. Blood started to pool beneath him, spreading fast. Some people rushed over. The woman just stood there repeating the same words over and over again. She looked like she couldn't believe what had just happened. When they rolled the man over, there was a large shard of porcelain sticking out of his stomach. It must have broken when he fell. We tried to help, but it was bad. He was still breathing, but it was slow, heavy. His eyes were wide open, locked on the sky like he was staring straight through it. The paramedics came quickly. So did the police. The man was taken away in the ambulance, and the cops started talking to everyone who saw what happened. I didn't have much to say. I had just come to look at a chair and ended up seeing something I'll never forget. Later that day, we heard that the man had died. My neighbor told me. He asked what happened, and I told him what I saw. I said the woman didn't push him. He just pulled too hard and fell. It felt like both of them were to blame, in a way. She got loud first, but maybe he said something that set her off. Who knows? The police never charged her. The man's family didn't push for it either. They called it a tragic accident. Still, the woman didn't stay in town much longer. People whispered about her. Some blamed her anyway. Not out loud, maybe, but with the way they looked at her, the way they spoke behind her back. I think she just couldn't take it anymore and left. It's wild how something so small can end so terribly. One minute, people are browsing books and lamps. The next, someone's gone forever. I didn't even buy that chair. I just went home. I still think about that man's face, the way he looked up at the sky, afraid and helpless. And I think about the woman too, walking away from the sale with nothing but guilt. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.